Hello and welcome to Access Chat. I'm delighted that this week's guest is Helen Wilson from Worcestershire County Council. Helen has been responsible for something that I think is really lovely. It's called SCULPT, and it's a framework for document accessibility. And it's one of those ideas that when you hear about it, you think, why didn't I think of that? It's brilliant. It's so simple. I first came across this on a webinar for the Business Disability Forum, where Helen and her colleague Debbie were talking about the sort of how it came about, how this framework came about, and SCULPT is really sort of breaking down, trying to make it easy and demystifying how you make documents accessible. And people forget quite often in the accessibility world that about document accessibility. We talk a lot about assistive tech. We talk a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We don't talk quite so much about accessible documents, and yet they're the things that we work with every day. So Helen, it's great to have you with us. Can you tell us a little bit about how SCULPT came to be and more about what it is?
Yes, SCULPT came to be really for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because inclusion is the right thing to do, and it shouldn't be just the job of some people, it should be the job of everybody. But also, obviously, the introduction of the web accessibility regulations came along. And we had our former Equality, Diversity and Inclusion manager, and she was blind and she used the screen reader. And I met her in 2017 struggling because someone had sent her a document she couldn't read. And this was my first real introduction to someone who used a screen reader and the challenges that they came across. And being in the web team, we've got a centralized web team. We had a lot of documents obviously come our way to upload to the website. We challenged them to create them as HTML instead, or but most of the time these documents were very poor for accessibility, and people didn't know how to make them accessible. So I sat down with Sandy, our equality manager at the time, and went through the things that would make life a little bit easier for her. And are there any simple things we can do? Another thing I did was I did a lot of workshops with people around the council. One in particular was quite a large one with a lot of people sat in the council chamber. And we kind of asked people what they understood of digital accessibility, whose responsibility it was, how would they know how to make a document accessible. And very much the opinion was that's someone else's problem, someone else's responsibility. And the biggest fear was how complicated and technical and all those kind of things rolled into one. And so we kind of sat down and worked out what are the things that are necessary and needed. And those things were structure of a document using headings, color and contrast. Sorry, my husband's just walked in. So structure of a document, color and contrast, use of images, links, plain English and tables. And those were the 6 things that Sandy said would help her just to even use a document in the most basic of ways. And when you kind of look at adding headings, a lot of people do that anyway. It's not a difficult thing to learn how to do. Color and contrast really should be common sense, but it was something to highlight. Use of images and meaningful alt text is something that people get very, very wrong. We had a lot of documents that came through with data, and instead of kind of describing some data, some really complex and quite useful, important data, and they just put a data table, which is no use to anybody. Links and kind of seeing how they're presented on a screen reader, often alphabetical kind of language and as a list, made you realize the importance of describing them. Plain English, it was something she advocated, Sandy, very, very much, because she said plain English and things not making sense would cause a barrier to anybody, but also when you're just hearing something, you know, complex language, jargon and stuff is not helpful. So plain English is the P. And then tables is kind of just trying to avoid merged and split cells, making sure there's a header row. So quite simple skills. And so SCULPT was born, those 6 things came about, and we did quite a big campaign that actually a whole workforce should be upskilled. It shouldn't just be the job of accessibility experts or just be the job of a web team. Everybody can do those basic things, and those basic things don't take long to learn. Off the back of that, we put together an e-learning module. We had conversations with key stakeholders, so learning and development, obviously Debbie, who sadly can't be with me today, heads of digital, heads of comms, HR, you know, senior leaders, and the importance of the world has changed, we have to upskill. And these skills are basic. You know, we're not expecting them to make the perfect accessible document. We're expecting them to add those basic reasonable adjustments to a document. And interestingly, we did a massive campaign. The importance of it became recognized and became part of our mandatory learning. So just like GDPR, just like health and safety, just like equality and diversity, the SCULPT and accessibility e-learning module is mandatory for all new starters and all staff. And we have a support area on our intranet, which is broken down into very basic kind of things, really. So if you run an accessibility check and it says something like image or object not in line, you can go on the page and look for image and object not in line, explains what it means, why it's saying that, and what you need to do. And we're really starting to take off, and people are using it in the language of the council every day. It's like, I've sculpted the document before I've sent it you, or you know, things like that. It's really, it's taken off because it's simple. And every video we put on, everything we've created, we've made sure it's no more than 5 minutes to kind of reinforce it is easy, it is bite size, and everyone, no matter what ICT skills you've got, can do it. Whereas before, all these things that were simple were assumed to be complex, techie, time consuming, and absolutely not their responsibility to do. So that's what SCULPT is, really. It's a framework, and it's captured the imagination of quite a lot of people who use it in their organisations. And recently we've added a case study of another council who've copied our model and have now embraced it as mandatory in their workplace. And our big ambition is that one day, imagine if it was the norm in every workplace. So, you know, these basic skills, if you know, when you have a computer, Neil, this will resonate with you today. You've got a new computer, you've got to learn new little ways and little quirks, haven't you? So that's the way we see it. It's an upskill that's necessary to make sure people have or change or adapt to the way they work. So long-winded answer, but that's kind of SCULPT. It's been on quite a journey. So
Ellen, you were mentioning that you have to engage with other departments, people in communications and all that. Can you tell us what you believe helped you to succeed and make sure that they were adopting and changing in order to make their documents, their documentation accessible? Because sometimes there's fear of change. People, oh, this is too complicated. What do you feel that you made that helped you to succeed here?
I think having the conversations with the right stakeholders and then presenting it, because you can present an idea and people will still think it's complicated because they've got this preconception that it doesn't matter what you're going to tell me, I know this is complicated to do. And so we did a lot of little demonstration. I think the easiest and quickest one was links. So I showed a page of links, and then I showed the page with the links in a list. And this is how they appear in terms of accessibility. But all of these are named click here, for example. But forget the screen reader for a minute. If you need to go and find a link in the document yourself, you've got to reread that document to work out which click here is the one you want. And it's really easy to actually change a link. So you know that people very quickly will copy and paste the full URL in, and then you can right click very easily and change the title of it. It's that simple, and it's less than a minute to show them one part of SCULPT. and then showing them an accessibility checker and how quick it can be to fix a document. You've almost got to show people the reality of how simple it can be, because unless you show people, they still have this barrier of, you've got to get over that barrier, if you like, to get past people's preconception of it being difficult. So showing them simple things, dropping little simple tips, did you knows, keeping we had some fantastic videos that we showed in our comms campaign, keeping it simple. We've had Sandy herself did some videos of why it was really important to her. She played a very large part, because I think because we had her in our workforce, people were a little bit more aware. Interestingly, just before coronavirus, we'd been out and we'd done a few webinars, and we were going to put all the posters up in the rooms around the council. Just like, you know, when you walk in a room and every single day you read the health and safety information, and it's kind of in your head, you know it, you don't know it, but you know it because you read it. And the idea being it would be on the wall with the same importance as health and safety. But of course, coronavirus came along. And coronavirus came along and we were like, right, no one's in an office. How are we going to do this? So we kind of put together a comms campaign of kind of, okay, people have isolated more than, you know, they're completely shut off. And you need to tell them stuff that could save their life. What if they couldn't read it? What if they can't open it? What if, you know, all these things. And in a weird little strange way, it helped us contextualize the importance of it. And sometimes the why we do it is just as important as how you do it. And we kind of try to just keep pushing that message out, why it's so important, but also try to push it out like color contrast. You've had your mobile phone on a sunny day, you can't see the content. It's just as important for you as it is for someone with vision issues. So, you know, there were quite a lot of things that we kind of tapped into. I suppose coronavirus was a fantastic one to kind of get it out there. We had we'd put together a thing called Here to Help, which was going out trying to help the community, kind of getting volunteers on board. And at that point, people were realizing the stuff they sent out via email needed to be accessible. This wasn't just about the website anymore. This was about, if I sent someone instructions, could they read that? So weirdly, coronavirus kind of helped our message. So it became recognized that actually digital information can be just as isolating as being shut in your house, kind of thing. So I think timing, but also demonstrating, showing and contextualizing, I think are the key messages, but also having senior leadership involved, because without them, you're steering a ship from the engine room. I think it's something that Alistair McNaught actually said in one of his things, that a web team can't lead an institute, you know, an organization. Only senior leaders can. So having the right people on board, and you know, sometimes you have to work with them and talk to them and spend time with them for them to really understand the importance of it. But also the fact on the web it's legal compliance should be enough anyway.
Yes, I just want to comment on, I just think it's so brilliant what you're doing. And it's interesting because it is simple, but we as a society have complicated accessibility. And I do not believe that, you know, we do need the accessibility experts, but so much of it is sort of common sense. And I have found the same thing. I remember coming in and doing training for a big telecom company, and we trained them and they got it. But the most important part that they loved about the training was actually watching my team that had disabilities using assistive technology and navigating their website, their apps, and their competitors' website and apps. And their competitor had actually worked hard to include us and still does. And this other company that I was training was just beginning, and they're doing great stuff now. But it was huge. It was such an eye opener. And then sometimes I would have a trainer. I used to have a man work for me, and we called him Mr. Jaws because he was so good on screen reader, and he was completely blind, and he didn't even have the screen. He just had the keyboard. And I remember he was training, and the students were so impressed with how fast he could listen to the screen reader.
Yes.
And then there was a technical problem, and that was really funny because they called technical support in. Technical support came and looked at his computer and was like, there's no screen. So it showed how intelligent this man was, that he'd figure out all it, because this was a long time ago. So, you know, things have gotten a little bit more accessible, but I think that we keep sending the wrong message that accessibility is too hard to do it. But instead, we need to talk about, why do we need to do it? And by the way, as you said, as we do these things, it improves the experience for everyone. But and also one more comment about COVID, because I agree with you. I think society learned a lot about inclusion of people with disabilities during COVID. We told you we're not being included. We're lonely. We're shut in. We want access. Oh, yeah. You know, like during COVID, where we all were doing this.
Yeah.
So,
so, and we do quite a lot about, you know, you walk down the high street 10 years ago, you'd go to the post office, you'll see a ramp, you'll see handrails, you'll see hearing loops, but the post office is online. What we're doing is providing the handrails, you know, all those, you know, that's what we're doing. We're providing those things. I mean, in terms of accessible documents, you know, they're not perfect, but they're the reasonable adjustments enough for someone to use them. Obviously, when they're put on the web, we have to do a little bit more, but it's the basics in place, isn't it? It's and those simple, tiny little things. If everybody spent 5 minutes a day, imagine the impact. And you know, it can be inclusive. It can work.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's so important to do things like this, and I think we keep overlooking that part, because if we can add the part you're doing into it, once again, we still need our accessibility experts, but people can learn the common sense, and they can take away a lot of the barriers just by paying attention, caring about other people. So thank you for reminding how important it is to have some common sense.
And it makes it's everybody's responsibility. Inclusion's everybody's responsibility anyway. So what's the difference when it's digital? So to us, it was like, this is for the wider workforce. Then obviously our team, in terms of specialists, if you like, for the web, that's our role. But everybody plays their part this way. And actually, it's interesting because on Wednesday, I think it was AbilityNet or someone who did a webinar about assistive tech and like a demo. And I place that on our sort of Yammer groups, if you like, and I place it everywhere. And quite a few people went to it, and I could see their names. I was like, yes, you know, people are interested. And somebody actually said to me, oh, I do this. Would it be a really useful thing for me to put, you know, that NVDA on my machine? You know, and I'm like, yes. She hasn't, you know, other than her normal day-to-day, she said, I'd be really interested in simulating that. And that's fantastic, because firstly, we've, you know, the fact that if you put that in any other workforce, you'd get your usual suspects, I think, that would attend something like that. But I was like, oh, you know, I get quite excited when a light bulb has gone on in someone's head. And, you know, we're starting to get a few what I call SCULPT champions who produce like enormous documents. We had a 269-page one recently, and there were just a few little issues on tables. And you only kind of get really quite excited that somebody has embraced it and made these, you know, documents, and they're really proud of themselves as well. And that's really, really good.
And I think that there's multiple reasons why I love SCULPT. First was the simplicity of it, you know, the fact that you've got this acronym that is meaningful, that also, you know, ties in with the fact that it's creative. So you know, bravo for that. But then the fact that you've managed to start along the process of cultural change within the organization, and this has been a catalyst to enable that, is also another reason why I think it's exciting. And the final thing that you haven't mentioned yet, which is that it's open source. So you put it as a, you know, Creative Commons, you know, non-commercial share alike license, so anyone can use this. So Debra, if you like it, you can take it and you can adapt it. Absolutely. You know,
oh wow.
And so we're going to be using it.
I want to use it. I want to stick up with that.
Because we know that we have the same job to do in terms of demystifying document creation and accessibility across our 105,000 employee base. And we're not going to be able to just rely on experts to do this. So devolved responsibility for making at least the sort of doing the basics is really super important. So I think that whole sort of openness and sharing and it is exactly what we in Access Chat really like. You know, it's our ethos is about bringing people together and helping the community build and bring about that culture change. So you pretty much nailed all of our sort of sort of topics that are close to our heart with SCULPT.
It's, I mean, in terms of the website, the actual SCULPT website, worcestershire.gov.uk/SCULPT has got some bite-sized guidance on there, which kind of goes into some of the the 6 things. And we've said to people, it's not for profit. It's 6 skills we just want everybody to adopt or embed or whatever. And we've said to people, because they've gone, we work in education slightly different where we need to do. And I went, use SCULPT, use the graphics, you can download them, you can have it. And if you kind of do it slightly differently to how we do, tell us about it and we'll put your case study on our website, because actually who I'm presenting with Manchester do it slightly different to us, but actually that might be more relevant to a smaller organization than what we're doing. So I'm aiming, hopefully, as people tell us about what they're doing, we'll share that back so people can learn from others, and as people kind of adopt it, we might learn from them too and improve our own model. So yes, it's a Creative Commons not-for-profit open license.
Bit of a mouthful, but basically, yes, use it.
Yeah, have it. Yeah,
adapt it, share it. It's and I think that willingness to share and make it, gift it to the communities is really superb. So we'll be taking parts of it and applying it, because it makes sense. People do have that sort of light bulb moment. I'm gesticulating again about it. So with regard to the sort of culture change piece, how did you persuade your top management to mandate training? Because I know that mandating training is a tough one, because there's not many trainings that get mandated, because actually people don't like being told what to learn. So how did you manage to persuade them, and what has been the sort of reaction? Did you hit 100%?
Yeah, about 90, I think.
Okay,
I think we've got about 90.
Really
Debbie would have been the better person to answer this, to be honest. But Debbie took over quite a lot of the responsibility for the training, and they were bringing in like a mandatory suite of learning and re-looking at, if you like, the structure of the learning stuff anyway. So timing wise, SCULPT kind of sat on that, but they did have to put together a paper in terms of justifying it being mandatory, with the fact that it's legal compliance on the web, and the fact that it can be, we kind of say it's like a bit of a lean model, if you like, because it can make things more efficient. And obviously Debbie put that paper forward, so she holds the secret to that one, but a lot of presentations were done around the council to a lot of people in terms of, this is how we are going to do things here. And initially some people were like, but I think that was again wrapped up in that resistance because of the complexity, the perceived complexity. But actually, yeah, Debbie put the paper forward for it to be mandated, and actually having the web accessibility regulations as a legal requirement obviously helped with that process, because any compliance thing, you kind of have to take it on board. So yeah, it's very much her thing, I suppose, is probably the best way, but it's a shame Debbie's not here.
No, so.
But in
Yeah.
terms of us in the web team, we'd have documents come in and we'd almost have to remake them. And we were kind of saying, there's no point in you paying your workforce to build a document, to then give it to someone else to remake the document, for it then to be, do you know what I mean? It's kind of,
Yes.
we did a little diagram of if you get someone who doesn't know what they're doing to build foundations of a house, and then you'll pay someone to dig up those foundations and rebuild them. And then and only then is it ready, you could build that. You would never ever do that in a building kind of context of getting someone to do something the wrong way and then get someone to do the right way. You wouldn't. And better is, and the fact these skills are basic, it makes it a bit more of an efficient process. So and especially when documents that are we have to have on the website. So there's some things that by law you have to kind of publish, and we've had to say no, I'm sorry, that they don't meet the accessibility requirements, and and then you have to go backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. But why don't you just make it right in the first place using basic skills? And that's all of these things came into it. But I can certainly get Debbie to kind of contribute a little bit more when we get onto the chat.
Helen, but when you say efficiency, it also, when you are mentioning efficiency, I think that also refers to saving money, right?
Yes.
And I know you work in the public sector, but I think that's a language that everyone understands somehow, right?
Yeah. Yes, they do. But it's almost that kind of accessibility. Doing something about it is going to cost lots and lots of money because they just have this preconceived, and actually it can make it not cost money. You've got members of staff who, if they start doing things slightly differently, which becomes norm, not extra time, not extra sort of this and the other, becomes the norm, then it's, you're not paying specialist people to unpick things. It doesn't make sense. So yeah, so there was quite a lot that we put forward. As I said, Debbie put that forward. So I didn't read it, if I have to be honest. But Debbie's been fantastic, and actually because she's part of like the senior team in terms of learning and development. This is an upskilling of a workforce, and you have to have your learn and development team on board. And she's been absolutely fantastic.
Excellent. So, gosh, where am I going with this one? So, I think that when you do have that senior buy-in, it does make it easier. But we have a terrible term for what you were trying to describe, which is, we call it the cost of non-quality. It's very mangled English,
yes.
But it's essentially the cost to the business of rework and doing things badly and then having to fix all of that stuff. So this is something that we track. So you can argue, or you can make, rather than argue, because we debate and we persuade here. We can use that data that we have to say, actually, you will reduce your cost of non-quality by X amount if you do this, and therefore it's an efficiency saving. So that's useful in lots of accessibility arguments, because it's not just documents that you're doing this, it's also applications, and applications even more so, because when you're developing websites and web apps and all the rest of it, it's not a fire and forget. Lots of documents, it's created once and it lives forever.
Yeah.
But if you write a code base that you're building upon, and the thing that is inaccessible, then the rework on that can.
And it's the same thing. It's completely the same thing. Yeah.
So you've done documents. Are you planning to take a SCULPT 2.0 and do some other
No,
stuff?
I think with SCULPT, it's the beauty of SCULPT is it's the simple, it's the starting point, it's the basics, and it needs to stay simple. And actually, another thing in terms of cost, it didn't cost us any money to put a page together. So I was doing little videos here and there. So if, say, somebody sent me a document that had a problem in it, I kind of made a video and then put that video on the training area kind of thing. The actual e-learning I wrote, which is very much an awareness of these things and explaining them, which is pretty much what's on our website, if you like, you know, the 6 pages. And putting an area together on your intranet, it didn't cost anything. And I think that was a bit of a win-win. They were like, oh, because as soon as you say accessibility, they just see like big bills, or, you know, so anyone can adopt it. It shouldn't cost lots of money. It doesn't, it kind of is part and parcel of our upskilling. So if you've got a new system, a new payment system, people have to learn how to use it, don't they? I mean, do you train every member of staff for an hour? You don't. They kind of have to self-serve. They have to learn how to do it. And we're very much on the self-service. So if you have a problem, you can go into the SCULPT area, you can read the error message, you can click into it, and it will tell you how to fix it. So it's very much that self-service, learning on the job, if you like, rather than, it didn't cost money. And I think, again, that's, people are like, really?
Yes, it can be quite easy to spend quite a lot of money on initiatives that sort of go nowhere because they're unduly complex. So you've been incredibly modest, because you haven't actually talked about the fact that you were a finalist in the Tech for Good Awards. Yes,
weirdly, well, firstly, we put it in because we were kind of, it would be nice for people to acknowledge it, that where we've got, and then we were told we were finalists, and you kind of going, oh, wow. And actually it just shows that with our little model, because in the beginning, all I ever wanted is it be mandatory where I work, because that means I've achieved my aim. And then other people are interested, and then it's on the government website, and then it's like, oh, and people can see that it can make a difference. And I think that's where that's come from. We've entered into some other awards, so fingers crossed, we'll see where that goes. But yeah, to me, it's like a little thing I doodled on the back of an envelope watching Coronation Street one night after a chat with Sandy. So to me, it was like, it's just my little thing, but it's not, it's a big thing. And sometimes I forget that people have really embraced it, and it's national. And when you can Google yourself, that's just weird.
Yeah. You'll get used to it.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So thank you so much, Helen. It's been,
thank you,
as always, a real pleasure talking to you. If you're watching this and you've watched to the end, go check out SCULPT, worcestershire.gov.uk/SCULPT. And need to continue to say thank you to Barclays Access, Microlink PC, and MyClearText for keeping us online and captioned. So look forward to you joining the chat on Tuesday. Thank you very much.
Thank you.